how do you recommend they approach it? If they're not, if maybe they don't have a lot of help yet, they're just diving into it. How do you get started?
Yeah, it's a great question. And honestly, you can't just dive into it. I mean, in the sense that if you just sort of pull it up and start looking at numbers, you're going to go nuts.
Yeah.
Anybody would. It's just completely overwhelming and you have no idea what you're looking at. And that's absolutely normal because it is a whole load of numbers. And really the only way to approach it is to put it away and think about your business first and your website. So, what are you trying to achieve in your business? And what are all the outcomes that you're looking for? So that could be, obviously, most people want increased sales or leads. Those are the big goals. Maybe more awareness, brand awareness, from people looking at your content, watching your videos, etc. But you need to also think about your, what we call in marketing, micro goals, the smaller outcomes that are sort of steps along the way that people do before they make a purchase. Like maybe they sign up for your newsletter.
Before we jump into this episode, please subscribe to this podcast, hit that notification bell if you're on YouTube, and after a listen, please give us a thumbs up, like, and share, if we've earned it. With your help, we can reach more people and deliver these valuable From the Trenches lessons to those that need it. Enjoy the episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another The Builders. Today, we are joined by Philippa Gamse. Welcome to the show, Philippa.
Hey, thanks, Matt.
So, she is an analytics expert. She helps people pull apart their analytics and so much more. So much more. It goes way deeper than just the technical side of this. We're going to have a great conversation today. Not only going to get to know Philippa a little bit, but we're also going to dig into the wonderful world of analytics, but what to do with all that data and what it actually means and how it should be used. So, Philippa, how we start things the first time you're on this podcast is what we like to do is we like to spend some time getting to know you a little bit, your journey, what your origin story is, how you ended up being this awesome business person, entrepreneur, doing amazing things in the world, helping people, all that good stuff, and how you landed where you are today. So with that, I will hand it over to you and you tell your story.
Actually, when you said origin story, I thought that's the bit where my mummy and daddy get together, but, okay.
Yeah, maybe not. You don't have to go quite that far back. But
right.
That's a very similar story to all of ours.
Exactly. We all know how we got here. Right.
That's right.
Yeah, actually, it's actually quite interesting because by education, I'm a qualified archivist, which has got absolutely nothing to do with digital marketing and is basically focused on, since I'm British, very old, dusty historical manuscripts, which I love playing with.
Interesting.
So it has absolutely, it's ridiculous. But, and I still kind of do that for a hobby, but what I think it's about is information and communication. And I actually... it's kind of a story where, there's all sorts of synchronicities. And I, before I went to archive school, which was a postgraduate qualification in the UK, I had to do a year's internship. And I interned at a high energy physics lab where they were doing all sorts of amazing research into accelerators,
Wow.
I mean, I have no idea what they were doing.
They were doing something. There was some particles flying around. I don't know.
Particles, exactly. And I've been around for a while, so that, this was they were establishing an archive, but it was in the early days of computers really getting into doing cataloging, and so I got very interested and excited by that, and. Okay, I don't know how. It's just a fun story because the truth is, it was, and again back in those days, almost all of the scientists were men, and the only place where there was a significant grouping of women was in the library, where I was based, and so the men used to flock to the library simply to see women, and So there were all these mad scientists who were really happy to teach me anything I wanted to know about working with computers. And so they did. And I learned a huge amount, and it was great. And I started to really see the potential of information and computers, put together, or communications and computers put together. And that's kind of the way I went. And so I went into sort of cataloging and in databases. And I mean, you can see the progression from there. But for me, the interesting thing is I'm not particularly interested in technology for its own sake. I like working with technology that helps people do things and data that helps people do things, make better decisions and so on. And so, I kind of got into email and information distribution via the web. But then it became obvious that we needed to know how people were using that information. And so there is a sort of pattern to it, but it's just kind of a fun story to tell.
Yeah.
And analytics has been around actually longer than most people think. And before Google Analytics, I had by that time moved to the US, and I was living in Santa Cruz. And in Santa Cruz, there was a guy that I met, another Brit actually, who founded an analytics program for small businesses called ClickTracks. And ClickTracks was amazing.
Sounds
back
familiar.
in the very, very early days of analytics. It was fantastic because it was really intuitive, really easy to use. Lots of little icons and little figures doing things. And I mean, it was great. You could really just play with it.
There was little figures doing things. In the world of emojis, I'm thinking of like a little emoji like dancing and stuff.
It was no, it was really, the visuals were very, very well designed. I mean, if you think what GA4 looks like today visually, it's horrendous, but it was fantastic. I loved it, and I got to work closely with it. And then when Google Analytics came along, which was free, which of course his package wasn't because he had to make money and so forth. Yeah. Of course, that was the end of it because Google was just eating his lunch. Right. So, then everybody had to work with Google Analytics, but I'd still miss ClickTracks because I love that interface, and it also did very intelligent things. I mean, it did segmenting. I'm sure we'll talk about it in a while, and it did things that were fairly advanced for the time that most people weren't even thinking about. So
fascinating. Yeah, you don't think it feels like Google Analytics has been here forever. I don't remember. I started on the web in the early 2000s, and I don't remember when Google Analytics really came into being specifically.
Right, and in the early 2000s, if you'd wanted to, you could have used ClickTracks.
That's why I think I feel like I recognize that name, but I maybe even did back then. It's all right.
Yeah, at the time it got bought by, I think it was Lyris. I don't know what happened after that. Yeah. So yeah.
There's a lot of in my time, especially when I was more focused on internet marketing. The first 10 years I was online. And we did a lot of affiliate marketing and, tracking clicks and just clicks and not even just the really deep analytics. It was just a tool that would say, here's where that came from, or somebody clicked it. Very basic information, but at least you know it's working. Right.
Right.
It's come a long ways from there. So that's very interesting, though. It's I can tell definitely what type of mind you have. You love digging into the technical aspects of things, and especially coming from archiving and stuff. That's fascinating. I've never talked to anybody that was into something like that. What attracted you to that, like working with manuscripts or whatever? Just out of curiosity, like was it something?
My undergrad was history, and I still love history. It's just so kind of weird because here I am doing digital marketing, and when I'm doing my hobby at the weekend, it's transcribing parish registers from the UK from, like the 16th, 17th centuries. Wow. To help people doing their family histories. Yeah. And of course the writing is very, very different. And but it's also interesting because archiving, goes on. I mean, archiving is about preserving certain records for so that people can do research and so forth. And now that so much is digital, it's huge problems and challenges for archiving because, I mean, think about a few years ago, we were using, when computers first started, we were using paper tape, and remember all those massive printouts, all that paper. and those huge disks. I mean, so the way that we store information has rapidly changed, microfiche, whatever. And the big question is, I mean, think about how we record information. And remember, we used to have like little digital recorders. And I mean, things change quite rapidly now. And there's all sorts of questions about preserving materials in media form that we might not be able to access anymore because it's been and gone, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, there's a lot more risk there if something happens. Yeah.
I mean, the good news is, parchment from 2,000 years ago, if you keep it properly, is still there. But
it's almost like they had better technology, right?
Right. Something digitally from the 1980s, you might not be able to access anymore. It's crazy.
Even you think back, like tapes and stuff you mixed tapes and stuff you made back then. Like, I don't even know what I would play it on anymore. Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow. Yeah. So, but it's interesting. So then you got into, that's just a fascinating journey. I love it. It's such a common thread in people's lives. One thing leads to another, and you just have this discovery, you meet this person, or you see a connection somewhere, and you're like, oh, really, that's interesting. But so,
and even that, the intern job at the lab where it all started for me was pure synchronicity, because the librarian, who was my boss and who hired me, she was the one who said, we need to, it was a very historic project that the lab had started back in the 1950s. And I think it was the first one of this linear accelerator. Wow. And the librarian said, we need to preserve these records because they're historic. And we need somebody to help us do that. And she was the one who came up with the initiative to say, we need to find somebody to do this. And of course, this was completely foreign. I mean, most of the scientists would never have thought about it, but she was the librarian.
Right. It's
almost... And so, it's just all these, somebody has an idea and you get lucky.
That's interesting how, like, sometimes, if you're in something, you're like the expert and you're in there like a scientist or whatever, and you're doing your day-to-day stuff. You need somebody with a completely different path or different expertise or ideas to come in and infuse something else into the discussion.
Right.
Like, that's fascinating. So you did that, and how did you start? Were you working for companies, or when did you start like going out kind of on your own and doing your own thing?
Back in the mid-90s, okay, no, I'm really dating myself, but back in the mid-90s, I had come to the US, wanted to try living in the US, worked for a while with a big national nonprofit in Chicago while I got all my papers and everything. I mean, I didn't work illegally. I should be, don't want to be careful what I'm saying here. No, they had me on a temporary work visa, and then I got my permanent residence and so forth, and so forth. And I actually became a citizen after that. So I'm legit. It's
You're
okay.
legit. Well, good. Good. That's important because we never know who's watching this.
Right. But so, to be very honest with you, I don't know how you are, but I'm really not a great corporate employee. I like working for myself in my own time, and I like working with clients who really want to work in partnership with me and figure out what we can do. And, I mean, instead of performance evaluation, I'd rather have a client recommend me to somebody else, because that's what says... That to me is the real evaluation, right? Would you recommend this person to somebody else?
Right.
And so effectively, as soon as I had all the correct, permissions, I started my own business. Yeah.
Nice.
So,
and did you, I mean, what was that like? Was it scary to go out on your business, into business for yourself, or was it challenging?
No, because... Well, I mean, obviously it's challenging, and obviously there are major ups and downs, and well, you know what it's like. I mean, you never know quite what you're going to make, and sometimes it's great and sometimes it's a bit lean, but I really wanted to do it because, as I say, I hate going to the same office every day. I hate commuting. I hate all the office. Yeah. So the great thing about being a consultant is that for the most part, you can avoid all the office politics.
Right.
which is another thing that I hate navigating. So
I think it's interesting because, like, with again, entrepreneurs and business, people in general that never give up. That's actually the key, is just, you want this, and you're willing to fail, you're willing to trip up, or and face those challenges because this is what you want. It's not something where, yeah, maybe I'll do it, and then you fail and you go back to working for somebody. Now you're just going to keep going. If you really want something, you're going to just keep going after it until you do finally succeed, which you did.
Hopefully,
obviously.
Yeah.
So you were involved with, so you started doing consulting. And that kind of leads you to today, which we'll probably dig into more on. Like you have basically an agency today, and you help, or are you still more freelance and consulting? What are you doing today?
I work with people in partnership and collaboration, but I don't have employees. Gotcha. So I'm not an agency in that sense. Okay. So yeah, it's a structure I prefer. I mean, I like knowing lots of people that I can bring in.
Right.
But I don't want to have
It's interesting because number one, like, I've talked to freelancers who are obviously a freelancer, but they don't want to call themselves a freelancer. They want to call themselves. They have other words for themselves, and that's awesome. So that's an interesting model too. Like, I think about even my agency. Like, that's a decision I had to make. In the beginning, I actually did. I would just outsource or find people to do specific things, but eventually I started building an internal team. But that's a decision you got to make, because with that comes other challenges, and your role changes. So one of the things I have a question for you. So you've been doing this for a long time, not that long.
Right.
You're still young. But for at least a few decades, we were talking about the early 2000s, and just Google Analytics comes into the picture. And what is kind of your experience through all that? Now, I just dabbled in Google Analytics, essentially. That was always kind of this thing I used in everything I was doing over the years. And now I just help people implement it and stuff. But you kind of were in it this whole time. What has that evolution been like from like the early 2000s to today? How has it changed and morphed, and just broadly, like in the beginning it was probably pretty basic, but things change, and technologies change, and devices change, and now we got social media, and we got a lot's changed in the last couple decades. It's been fun.
Yeah, we have a lot more channels, and we have more sophistication. I mean, okay, I don't want to get too techie, but things like attribution, right? Which is saying, how can I allocate the cost of gaining a customer across all of the different types of marketing that I do, right? So very few people come to your website and buy something immediately. Many times they might come back. So they might originally come because they see, I don't know, an ad, excuse me, and then they see something you did in social media, and they click on that, and they have another think about it, and then they find you, well, whatever. And each of those different touch points have an impact on whether or not they buy from you. And so something that marketers like to do is figure out what sort of contribution each of those channels make, because that allows you to figure out how much effort you want to put in and money you want to put into each channel. So all of that has become very, very complicated. And that's part of, AI is helping that now, and that's all part of what's going on in analytics, as an example. Obviously, there's way more data than there used to be. But I mean, it allows us to be more sophisticated, because we've gone way beyond the points of, how many visitors did we get this week and what was the bounce rate? Yeah. Neither of which are particularly useful pieces of information. Yeah, right. Because you want to give them more context, and you want to, not just how many visitors did we get, but how many visitors that were the right type of visitors for us did we get, and how many of them actually did what we wanted them to do, because then you're getting to the point.
So that,
but I also should say that I think when we got the previous version of Google Analytics, which we refer to as Universal Analytics, everybody was pretty happy with. And it was nice, it was easy to use, it gave you good information, and everybody was very settled with it. And then all of a sudden, Google came out with Google Analytics 4, GA4. I think, I mean, because of all the privacy concerns that were beginning to grow, especially, GDPR in Europe and so on. And so it's much more robust in terms of privacy tracking and people being able to withdraw permission to track them and so on. But it's a double-edged sword because, the fact of the matter is, unfortunately, that GA4 is horrible. In some ways. You see so much hate for it online. The issue is the interface and some of the functionality, which has become quite complicated and not intuitive in the way that it used to be. So there are all sorts of people saying, how do we get back to the reports we used to have with UA? And the flip side of that, which is why I'm working with it, is that if you get to grips with it, or you get somebody like me to get to grips with it for you, it's really powerful because it can do amazing levels of measurement and digging deep into what you've got, really customizing it, for your business, your needs, what you're trying to have happen, as opposed to the default out the box. And if you understand that and you can work with it, then you can get really good insights. So it's a great tool, but it's not attractive tool, I think, is maybe the...
Is it? I mean, does it have... Are there other competitors out there, like, besides Google Analytics? What do people use? The larger enterprise companies, Adobe has a very powerful product, but that does... A, it's quite costly, and B, it's complex, and typically you need a team to run it, or you need a consultancy to run it. So that's really not a sort of small, medium business type tool. In Europe, there are still suspicions about Google and whether Google's okay to use now. And there are programs like Matomo or Piwik, which a lot of people are talking about, which are more like UA in what they give you, which means that they don't give you potentially some of the more sophisticated stuff that GA4 can do once you start customizing. And I want to be careful because I don't really want to go through a list of tools because I know I'll miss something that's really good. And I don't want to sound like I'm recommending any particular one. I'm working with GA4 because I do think it has potential, but I know there are other tools that people are very impressed by. I think most of us think of GA, Google Analytics, when we're thinking about analytics, because it's most popular and it's obviously what I turn to, and most of my, pretty much all my clients do as well, and and it's free. But what I also heard from you is I asked the question, how it's changed over the years, and I think how it's changed is pretty straightforward. It's just gotten more complex and but more robust, and you're able to do so much more granular work, and you can get a lot out of it. But I'd imagine the average user, though, I know this because I've trained people on it. The first time you go in there, it's, what is going on? What is even happening in here? And forget trying to use like Google Tag Manager or something too, or whatever. There's these tools can get very, very complex, and I think even for me, me tracking my own sites, we all have limited time too, and so you got to spend time to learn it, or you have to find somebody that can help you do it, but you also got to know what to look at and how to use it, because it's like any interface. Even like Google, like I work a lot in WordPress and plugins, and there's a lot of really robust plugins out there that just do all this stuff, but you only need this little bit. You only need that one thing, that one piece of data, or that one feature. So when somebody is diving into Google Analytics, how do you recommend they approach it? If maybe they don't have a lot of help yet, they're just diving into it. How do you get started?
Yeah, it's a great question. And honestly, you can't just dive into it. I mean, in the sense that if you just sort of pull it up and start looking at numbers, you're going to go nuts.
Yeah.
Anybody would. It's just completely overwhelming and you have no idea what you're looking at. And that's absolutely normal because it is a whole load of numbers. And really the only way to approach it is to put it away and think about your business first and your website. So, what are you trying to achieve in your business? And what are all the outcomes that you're looking for? So that could be, obviously, most people want increased sales or leads. Those are the big goals. Maybe more awareness, brand awareness, from people looking at your content, watching your videos, etc. But you need to also think about your, what we call in marketing, micro goals. The smaller outcomes that are sort of steps along the way that people do before they make a purchase. Like maybe they sign up for your newsletter, right, just to stay in touch. You want to look for how much, are they reading our stuff? Are they engaging with content? Are they looking at products? So you want to think about, what do I need to know to make this better? So start looking at your website. And I like to say every page of your site should have a strategy, not just the site itself, but every page of your site should have a strategy. Which means that on every single page of your website, or every page of every group, say, if you've got tons of pages, but you get the point. Mm-hmm. You need to know, what do you want people to do here as a result of seeing this page? So, A, is there content on it that it's important for them to consume all the way through? B, is there what's the call to action, and are they taking it? Because it's amazing. And again, I talk to marketing people and website owners, and I'll say, nobody sees your call to action. And they say, of course they can. It's right there. I know exactly where it is. And because they're so close to their own site that they can't believe that people don't see what they see. And that's very, very common in my experience. So creating, the first thing you need to do is make questions. Like, here's what I expect to happen, or here's what I'm looking to happen. Is it happening? Right. And then you can go back to the analytics and start asking those questions of the analytics. So if you're going to customize it, you can start looking at things like, okay, I've got really important content, but some of that important content is towards the end of a longer page. So if by default, Google Analytics 4 will tell you if people go 90% down the page by default. But for a very long page, a lot of people don't get there. So you want to say, okay, well, how far do they go? And you can customize it to make it tell you, say, for example, I usually customize to 25, 50, 75, and 90%. Because that tells you, if you've got a longer page, on average, how much of that page do people see? And that's a huge clue, because right there, if you've got your most important call to action at the end of the content, which a lot of people do, and only 10% of your people get to the end of the page, that means only 10% of your people have seen what you want them to do. Right? So boom. So now you've got some information you can work with. So that's really honestly how you should approach it. If you, like I say, if you just dive in and go, what does this mean? What does this mean? Like without thinking about what am I looking for, it's just crazy.
That's excellent. That is excellent advice. No, it is. Really, like, what is your business goal? What is your goal with that person? Even like, I was thinking about, services or landing pages that sell service or product. I mean, that's one thing. Like, you might have a call to action on top to connect with you, or to download this thing, or to whatever is in your realm. But at the same time, even like things like a blog, like, why are you creating this content? Because you're just creating it, and you're optimizing it. You're hoping to get traffic, but what is that traffic doing when it hits that page? What is ultimately your goal for the whole blog, like all this content? And do you have anything on that page to convert it to do anything else?
Right. Blogs are a huge area of I see an awful lot of blogs that are wonderful. They have great material, but what they don't do. So, for example, I think actually in my ebook, I can't remember if this is the one in the ebook, that I worked with an event planner. I think this is in the ebook. So maybe I should give you a different example. We'll talk about my ebook in a while, but yeah. I worked with a flooring company.
Yeah.
And they would blog about different types of floor surfaces and carpeting and so forth, but they'd mention products in the blog, like this type of, covering is X, Y, right? But they didn't link from it. Well, it's obvious to you, there's, sometimes I like to say that consulting is the art of stating the blindingly obvious, but except that's why you're a consultant, because you've got the experience to make it obvious to you where it's not obvious to the client yet, because it's not their expertise, right? It's not because they're stupid. So making use of the blog every time you mention a product that you sell, linking to it, it's that kind of thing is really key.
Yeah, it's interesting, So I just an example, it's not even necessarily your products. If you do affiliate marketing and stuff like that, that's something especially you learn in those realms where like every traffic is super important. Your whole goal is to get somebody to buy something through a link, and so when I'm writing a blog post, I might recommend a tool or something, and I'm immediately thinking, okay, do I have an affiliate program for that? How am I going to link to it? Or I might link to it anyway, just for value. But if it's definitely one of my products or a service or my agency or products we sell, I'm definitely going to add a link there. Maybe not every paragraph, but a few of those are going to have links going. You don't want to spam people with your links, but
right.
But yeah, so what other ways, like linking, or you could throw a banner in there?
Yeah, but so for example, right there, like I actually just looked at a site with a lot of affiliate links. And so if you're doing affiliate marketing, one of the things you want to do is that you can do in GA4, for example, is track those links. So you want to know, out of all the different affiliate products you've got, which ones attract the most clicks. Maybe you're getting reports from the affiliate end. Well, I guess you are, right? Yeah. So how does your picture of how many people clicked on links compare to theirs? And obviously, how many sales do you get? How many of them convert? Because you're not in control of the affiliate's website. So if you have a lot of links in those sales, does it mean that your audience aren't interested in that product? Or does it mean that the affiliate website is not up to scratch and is not doing the job, because then is it worth you actually continuing to send traffic to them, or do you want, do you want to go somewhere else? So, again, you're evaluating every aspect of your business. Yeah, now, some of it isn't about the web. So, for example, you've got to apply some marketing savvy overall as well, right? I just talked with a site where they were experiencing a huge amount of items on an e-commerce site, lots of items added to the shopping cart, but not a lot of sales. Or was it lots of items looked at, but not a lot of sales? Yeah.
Or abandoned cart, or just
right, yeah. or not even started the begin checkout process. So the question is, because you also want to look for other causes, right? So is it that the checkout process is so painful that nobody completes it? Or is it something about the product? So is the product overpriced, for example, in the consumer's eye when they think about it? And it's interesting because this e-commerce site actually has physical stores, and the products sell great in the stores. So then you can say, okay, so it's more likely to be something about the website. But also bringing in other data to inform what you're thinking is really helpful. I couldn't believe this. I think I need to do a blog post about this, or a LinkedIn post. I talked to a prospective client earlier this week, and another e-commerce site, and they the purchases that GA4 is reporting have gone down unexpectedly, and they want to know why. So they want somebody independent like myself to come in and audit the data and make sure that GA4 is correctly reporting their e-commerce purchases. So this was amazing. First thing question out of my mouth, which I'm sure would have been the first question out of your mouth, is how does the GA4 reports of what transactions are going on compare with your actual back-end sales reports, which are real, right? Because those are the sales you're actually fulfilling. And this guy who's in the marketing department said, "Oh, we're not allowed access to those numbers."
Oh, no.
I know. So he said, "I have no idea." It's amazing. I'm looking at e-commerce reports out of GA, but I have no idea how many actual sales we make. I mean,
oh, that is not good.
Isn't that great?
Yeah,
I have to do this LinkedIn post. Yeah.
Yeah. It's and so what's fascinating. Well, first of all, yeah, I mean, affiliate marketing is, and it's a whole topic in and of itself. So, but one of the challenges I remember, especially when I was more heavily into it, today I just casually do affiliate marketing, just weave it in here and there. But it was always because we didn't have getting control of the landing page, so we could track that sale, and sometimes you could. There were certain scenarios where we could work with the provider of the affiliate program or whatever to set up a special landing page for us or get our code on there or something. But that was usually the smaller programs and stuff. The larger programs were a little harder. But yeah, it's that. But one of the things too is you talk about the e-commerce site. Like, because you can't just guess. You're like, oh, something's not working. Let me just look at it. Well, maybe it's the button color. I don't know. But you need to get those insights. It's like I worked with, for a while, I was building a lot of funnels. We call them in the internet marketing world, where you have some kind of incentive. They get into this funnel. It was webinars and videos people would watch, and there'd be all these different steps along the way to finally get to the sales page, and someone would buy something. So you're pre-selling them all the way and getting them excited. But and we were actually, in this particular case I'm thinking about right now, we were actually driving paid traffic. So, and I got it to break even. We're spending thousands of dollars, but we got it to break even.
Right.
And so we were getting, maybe lifetime value. We're in good shape, right? There, we can do a lot, but we wanted to improve that. So it was at that point, once we assessed where we were at, the next kind of step, which we never really got to, the project was closed down. But the next logical step was, okay, Sue, let's micro look at everything that is going on here. Like that video they're watching, how much are they watching? Where are they dropping off? And knowing every detail we can about that traffic and how it's flowing, and do we need to change something, tweak something? Is something preventing them from going to the next step? Maybe it's something technical. You got to figure all that stuff out, and the same on any website. And because really, e-commerce is really just this open funnel. You're just trying to get them from over here to over there.
And sometimes it's really obvious, like something is broken, but that's not always often the case. And so, but again, with analytics, I mean, any of this stuff, you get down to trial and error, because you have to come up with an idea. Like, okay, I wonder if it's this.
Yeah.
And so the numbers are going to give you some clues, and you can visualize that funnel and see at what point do people leave. But you also have to come up with some intuition. I mean, it's one of the things I love about analytics is, to me, it's a combination of technical data skills and creativity and imagination.
Right.
Which is fun. I think that's why I like it, because I can be creative. As well as just
creative with the solution. So we have
or
this
with
problem.
the thinking around, could it be this?
Right.
So, and then you have to test it. So, it's usually not an overnight solution. And like I said, you have to bring in other factors. I mean, okay, you're some sort of a fashion site, I don't know, for example, and in January your sales go way down compared to December. Do you panic? Maybe not, because everybody was buying Christmas presents and now they're not, right? Yeah. So, do you have seasonal ups and downs? I mean, because you have to figure all that in. Obviously, you can't, right? So, you have to know what you're doing in your business in order to do analytics properly.
What do you think is the top, like, one or two or three things that is, from your experience and all? I don't know what industries you work in, if it's all e-commerce or what it is, but like probably this is common across them. Like, what are common things that are the biggest problems? Like you find through your analytics. What have you solved? What are the big things you solve? Is it the call to action needs to be improved? Is that, because that's call to action to me is pretty high up on the list of important things to focus on if you're not getting sales or leads or whatever. What things?
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, calls to action is definitely a big one, because I can tell you that people don't instinctively do what you want them to do, even if you think it's obvious. Like I said, content engagement with important pieces of content is another one. Form filling, form filling is another art. You don't want to ask for people for too much stuff, because the more you ask, the less likely they are to fill in the form. And again, GA4, if you customize it properly, it says it does this out of the box, but in most people's experience, it very rarely does it correctly, because there are so many different ways of different types of forms, But again, you can tell when somebody has started to fill in a form, so you then can tell whether or not they completed it correctly. So that will tell you, like, if lots of people start the form and don't complete it, that there's something wrong with the form, obviously. So there are all sorts of things that you can do before you start getting to the other stuff that I do, which is fun, which is looking for new opportunities. So we want to optimize what we've got.
Yeah.
But then there's more. There are lots of examples that I have where we've realized from what we're looking at that there are opportunities to do something else or to reach a different audience. So if you realize that a lot of your traffic is coming for perhaps a different reason than you thought, your internal site search engine. So if you have a search engine actually on your site, that's amazing market research. I don't know if you look at that kind of data, but you can tell what searches people put into that. So that means that what they're looking for when they're actually on your website, not Google searches, but searches on your site for what you've got specifically. And that tells you, what kind of words do they use to describe what they expect to find from you? And that can be very revealing, especially in industries. I work with all sorts of industries. So because it's really about what I know about analytics and not what I know about that business, because the business owner or whoever's hired me is there to do that bit. But in industries with a lot of technical jargon, the industry is very close to its own jargon. And if the buyer is not, or has different words, right, then they may well be looking for something that in a way that they're familiar with that you have, but they're not finding it because they're using different words. And so and I've had people saying, but this is the official name of it, right? But you have to educate people where they are. You have to get them where they are. Then you can tell them what it's actually called, right?
Right.
So that can be huge clues.
So you create content around that, or you even provide an offer around that.
Right, for your SEO and all of that, so that when people are in Google looking up using their words, they find you, and then you can take it from there. Equally, we found searches for things that the people therefore expect you to provide, which are in your area of expertise, but you're not currently providing. And that has led to all sorts of new product development, new content development that can be very lucrative. I worked for an employment law firm, and they did a lot of training for corporations on how to prevent, harassment at work, that kind of stuff. And we realized they had all this great content, and there were employees coming to their website, not the employer who is hiring them to do training, but employees who are not going to hire them. So they're not qualified for the current business. But we created a set of ebooks targeted at them that said, so you think you're being harassed at work. Before you go to see an expensive lawyer, here's an ebook with all the sort of legal disclaimers, but written by an experienced lawyer. Some basic questions to ask to see if you might have a case, because often harassment isn't what it seems, as it were. And so we did something like that, like, should I be getting overtime? Was I unfairly dismissed? I've been accused of harassment. What do I do? And these books sold by the thousand.
Okay. Wow.
They were impulse buy pricing, like $20 or under for most of them. So that sort of, and then of course that whole thing is self-fulfilling, right? Because it's a download, so it doesn't take any staff time once it's set up. it took something that we saw in their search engines and could tell from the visitor traffic, and turned it into a product that was profitable. So, that's why I call it, looking for the hidden gems, because this is stuff that you would never know if you didn't look at the analytics. And yet it can allow you to do significantly different things for your business.
I love that. Yeah, I don't know if a lot of people think about that. They think about, well, let's just look at what we have and how it's doing, but really to come up with those creative ideas of new things to do.
Right.
And it's also, you can get what keywords people are searching for to find your site. That might be something completely random that sparks an idea. And it's just also the source of traffic. I remember also like early days where we would just use link tools again. That was just telling us somebody clicked on this link and ended up on our site. So it was basically just like a redirect link, and but we'd be able to track what the source was. And so we'd put links everywhere, like in signatures and forums and over here and over there. And then you'd just sit back and see where the traffic came from. And then maybe we need to spend more time in that forum because they're clicking on that a lot,
Right.
So it's just little things like that know where your source of traffic is and the quality of traffic as well, as because quality, it's not just how much traffic you're getting, right? It's the quality of that traffic.
Right.
Yeah. So this is fantastic. Let's see how we're doing on time here. we got a couple more hours. This is good. I mean, is there anything else you'd like to share related that you think is really impactful for? Like, I think one of the things that we're going to all get from this, like I think about the takeaways from this particular episode, is there's a lot. There's a lot.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
And so there's a lot of, you can Google and find a lot of help on things, even something like you want to test a particular thing, whether it's forms, whether it's this or that, or somebody clicking that button, you probably can find help on the web to do those things. First of all, are there good resources out there that besides just Google that people can get help with? And at what point, if somebody wants to really get help, they want to hire somebody like you, what does that process look like?
So, I mean, there are lots of resources online. I mean, there's a huge amount of really good courses and stuff like that in GA4. My only concern is that for the average business owner or marketing person who's not techie, they do tend to be quite techie. So there's a lot of, like, if you want to get to grips with the interface, there's all sorts of things you can read up on. But if you just want to know what can this do for me, or if you want to get ideas about what sort of things do I look for, it's a little more difficult to find that kind of information, like in English, as it were. So, and there are a lot of analytics consultants as well. I mean, obviously some better than others, as it were. But
it's one of those where anyone can, they read something and now they're an expert. But that's what I love about you, is because I would imagine when you're working with somebody, just like you said, you work in all these different industries and stuff. And I found that as an affiliate marketer, my specialty was testing markets with pay-per-click advertising stuff. Right. So I literally hundreds of thousands of merchant and market, keyword combinations. And so I would see all of this stuff. And I felt like I had more, enough experience where, I could come with new ideas in a completely different industry. Like I just think about things in a more dynamic way. But with you, It's like with all your depth of experience and passion for what you do and stuff, that could be a very useful person to have. So when somebody comes and I talk about process, how do you help somebody? Do they come to you? Do you consult with them? Kind of maybe a first meeting and just talk with them and figure out where do you start with their problems, what they're having issues with? Is that usually where you start?
Well, obviously, if they come to me, then what's going on? And then, I mean, I do it's not my favorite piece, but obviously the first thing we have to do is an audit to make sure that the data is being correctly collected. And that GA4 has some strange default settings, like it only keeps your data for 2 months, which seems silly. There are some other things that I almost always change rather quickly. So audit the settings. I mean, obviously with the business, with, the client's permission and in discussion with the client, but and as I say, make sure that the data seems to be correctly collected and is completely collected. So with e-commerce, for example, there are various e-commerce, what they call events. So when somebody adds something to the cart or takes it out of the cart, starts to check out, adds the payment, etc., that all have to be correctly coded. So you want to make sure if they're doing e-commerce, for example, that all that is done right. But that's not the exciting piece. I mean, it's necessary because garbage in, garbage out, right?
Right,
but
right.
Once you're comfortable that you've got some data you can look at, then that's where we start saying, okay, so the questions that I was asking before, what do you want to be happening? And how do we start proving that it is happening? And then along the way, what else should we look for? And I mean, the things like the site search or the ideas for new products, new audiences start popping up as you get to grips with the numbers. So that's more of an intuitive process. You never know what you're going to see, right?
Yeah, right.
But it's really important to talk to be clear about what are you trying to do. And sometimes, again, it's really simple. I mean, I last year, one of my clients decided to do something on a temporary basis, but that was really what they want. The most important thing they wanted to do with their business for a temporary period of time. And they put a link to it in the navigation at the top of the homepage. But it wasn't on the homepage, and they were complaining because very few people went to the page where they were talking about this one thing that was their primary goal at the moment. And I said, but it's not on the homepage. And they said, well, but it's in the navigation. Everybody looks at navigation links. And I said, no.
No. Especially if it's in a like a sub list somewhere. Yeah.
And again, one of the things you can do with GA4 is you can actually track where people go with their mouse. And I mean, there are other programs that do this, like heat maps and so on, but right. You can do all of this within GA, so you can relate it to where did they come from or what other data that you might have about that visit. So you can see where did they look at, where did they hover, what elements of the page did they see. So you can literally prove what you're saying. It's not just a guess, right?
Yeah.
Which is important.
Yeah, so it sounds like so you start with the technical, make sure you actually have everything set up properly, and then from there you figure out what the goals are for the business.
It gets much more interesting, yeah.
And then it gets more interesting because especially it gets interesting, like anything, like even in what I do, the best part about it and the funnest part about it is seeing the results. When you implement something, and it fixes something or it adds something that suddenly impacts the actual bottom line and improves the business and makes people happy. So that's one of the favorite. And one of the things, I don't know why this sticks out so much. I think about, because I guess because I work with a lot of websites and all of them have search, but I highly doubt anybody has any idea what that search box is doing or what people are searching in there to capture
Goldmine.
that data. It's got me thinking, like, am I capturing that data?
It's a goldmine. It's and then it will tell you if they found a search result or not, and if they used it or not. It's a goldmine. Yeah,
I actually think you're a goldmine. If somebody, no, seriously, there's so much in this, and I think again, it's one of those things where it's overwhelming, especially if you're non-techie. Like I've been doing this for 20 years, but and so a lot of the concepts and ideas and stuff, and there's only so many ways you can build something. So it's kind of been this way forever. But for somebody that's just an average business owner, or somebody that's just kind of like, or even a marketing person on the team, like that's not. I've worked with marketing people that don't really know anything about analytics.
Well, marketing is a huge discipline with all sorts of different things in it.
So everyone has their specialty, and
right. Absolutely, yeah.
So we need somebody like you that has a gold mine full of ideas and thoughts and processes. And if somebody wants to, if they do want to, maybe they're in a place where they need some help, they need some additional help, and they need to reach out to somebody and discuss that. What's the best way for somebody to get a hold of you, or where do you hang out on the World Wide Web?
I hang out on LinkedIn a lot.
LinkedIn.
So, yes, I'm on LinkedIn. I do have a website, websitesthatwin.com, which I'm sure you'll put links to.
Absolutely.
And I talked about this a bit earlier by mistake, but I do have an ebook which is free, which I just created, which sets out, I call it 5 hidden gems. So it's 5 different ideas of different types of businesses that I've worked with. So it's all from my experience with clients. Something that we discovered in the analytics, which we wouldn't have otherwise known, that allowed us to come up with one of these creative ideas to solve that problem and grow the business. And a little note on how to find it in analytics, but it's really not, it's not a technical book. It's a business story book. I think you've seen the book. So
I took a look. I sneaked a peek.
You sneak it. But it is, I'm offering it to anybody who would like it because I really want to inspire people in a non-techie way, like I've been trying to do here today, with stories of some of the things that you can do with this stuff that really allows you to grow your business, or to stop doing things that are wasting money. So if anybody wants that, again, it's on my website, hopefully, and I'll link it from LinkedIn as well. So hopefully you'll be able to find it, and
I'll have it in the show notes too. We'll link it up and
enjoy.
All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure, Philippa. Until next time.
Great. Thank you.
That's all for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed that. Again, please subscribe if you haven't already and give us a thumbs up if we deserve it. Now a word from our sponsor, my agency, Unified Web Design. We build custom websites, features, we maintain websites, we work with agencies to fulfill their web design and development needs, and more. If you're interested in our services or are looking for an agency to work with as a partner to build awesome sites for your clients, feel free to reach out to me at unifiedwebdesign.com. There's a handy contact me link at the top. Fill out that form and it will open a ticket, and that ticket will find its way to me. Thanks for joining me today. We'll see you next time.